What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Ben on Sports. Today, the NASCAR Weekly Preview and Prediction Series coming your way. Without further ado, let's get into it. Storylines going into Talladega. Number one biggest storyline in all the NASCAR right now, Tyler Reddick back in victory lane, and he's back over 50% winning percentage on the season, winning 5 of the 9 races, extending his lead in the points even larger, as you'll see later. Tyler Reddick continues his incredible season so far. After having a no-win rough season last year, it seems his luck is finally averaging out. Second race he's won on an with a late restart, doing a good job of capitalizing when opportunities fall in his lap, and just good finish after good finish, even when he is not winning races. Tyler Reddick, man, right now it feels like nobody's going to be able to touch him, but there's still plenty of time left in the season, as last week marked the 1/4 point of the season, 9 out of 36, and there is still a point reset. Other news, Toyotas are still fast at Kansas. It still seems to be the Toyota playground. Many of the contenders were Toyotas. You obviously had Kyle Larson, who's usually good at Kansas, but most of the contenders and most of the top 10 was Toyotas. Back markers messing it up for everyone again. Cody Ware, whether it was the team, whether it was Cody Ware, whatever it was, caution-free race until the very end. Now, some people got much better finishes because of it. Some people got worse finishes. We could have missed an all-time ending between Denny and Tyler Reddick. We did not, but back markers, man, there's been a lot of races this year where they decided to just spin out with 5 laps left, and then there's a game-changing caution. We got to figure out what's going on, and we can't keep on having back markers and people who aren't in the contention to win the race, people who aren't in contention to do anything in the championship. They can't just keep causing wrecks and causing things to happen that routinely are affecting drivers that do have a lot on the line. So Cody Ware, Rick Ware Racing, whoever it was, I respect that team, and I like to see small teams, do stuff, but you're in last place so many laps down. Why are we trying to push it that hard? I don't know. I'm tired of seeing it. Let me know in the comments below if you can think of any solutions for it. Late cautions changing things up again. I kind of just said that. Reddick and Denny were battling for first, and they kind of still were at the end. Kyle Larson gave him another chance. Chase Briscoe didn't have any long run speed, and somebody that needed points, and he ended up finishing third when he probably would have finished outside the top 10 without the caution. A lot of things like that. Christopher Bell had a good finish coming and then made contact and finished a lap down in 20th instead of in the top 5 where he deserved it. So late race caution changing things up a lot. Happened the last 2 races, but that's what late race cautions are good for, causing chaos. Should I start to worry about the Chevy teams? Chase Elliott won on that important strategy call. But other than that, Chevy has no wins, and a lot of the teams that are supposed to be premier Chevy teams are struggling. RCR is struggling. Austin Dillon did finish on the lead lap. His teammate Kyle Busch, who that's a whole other story on whether or not people need to be concerned, had an awful day finishing out in the back. Trackhouse Racing does not seem to have a whole bunch of speed on ovals, unless it's a super speedway, which again, that's a completely different kind of class. Just a lot of these Chevy teams you expect to be good seem to be falling. On the other side, though, and Hendrick Motorsports, 9 races into this year, only has 1 win on a strategy call, and one of their best drivers, William Byron, has really struggled most of the season. He's still in 7th, but in points, but not having the season you would expect from William Byron. But then you see Spire Motorsports is really, really having a good season. And has 2 drivers in the playoffs and 1 driver that is close to the playoffs, and they have a lot of good finishes. So, Spire is maybe the only Chevy team exceeding expectations. The rest of them, I think, are struggling, and I would not have expected that this far into the season. And I guess to an extent Ford is too. I mean, RFK is consistent, but they're consistently 8 to 12. Penske, not a great day. Penske can be up and down. The Toyotas, man, 7 of the 9 race wins this season. Toyota off to a crazy hot start. And then what did happen to Penske? Even Blaney, sometimes there's races where Cindric doesn't look good or Logano doesn't look good or those two, but usually you can count on Blaney at least making a run towards the top 10. Blaney finished 24th. Just not a good day for Blaney, not an awful day for Logano. Cindric was the best car. Penske, I thought, was making strides in their mile-and-a-half intermediate, and it appears that they weren't. A very rough day for them last Sunday. Let's get into history at Talladega. That's what they're going to next, going to another drafting super speedway type track. The last one they haven't been to, they go to Daytona and Atlanta to start the season. Now they go to Talladega to finish the first half of drafting racing. History in the next gen. Chevy got out to a fast start. Chastain, Elliott, and Kyle Busch won the first 3 races. Then Ryan Blaney, on way to his championship in 2023, won this race in the playoffs in October. Tyler Reddick won on the way to his regular season championship in 2024 in the spring. Then Ricky Stenhouse Jr., one of his 2 next-gen wins, the other at Daytona, very good super speedway racer. Ricky Stenhouse won in the fall of 2024. Austin Cindric, his last one in the Cup Series was the Talladega Spring Race. And then Chase Briscoe, on the way to the championship 4, won this race last fall. Best average finishes, William Byron at 9.3. Todd Gilliland, Front Row Motorsports, is usually good on drafting tracks. There you see Gilliland at 13.1. Chase Elliott, 14.5. Chase Briscoe, 15.3, tied with Alex Bowman at 15.3. And the other thing I'd like to point out here, if you look at the recent winners, there's been 8 next-gen races at Talladega. There has been no repeat winners. So will we see our 9th different winner in 9 races at Talladega? Certainly a possibility, at least in the next-gen era. Most top 5s, 4 drivers are tied at 3. Meaning no driver has finished in the top 5 at half of the races at Talladega. Those 4 drivers tied at 3, Brad Keselowski, Kyle Larson, Ryan Blaney, and William Byron. And then 8 drivers tied at 2 top 5s, Austin Cindric, Denny Hamlin, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., Chase Briscoe, Kyle Busch, Ross Chastain, Chase Elliott, and Noah Gragson. Top 10s, William Byron, maybe not getting top 5s all the time, but finding a way to get top 10s. 5 of the 8 races, William Byron has gotten a top 10 at Talladega. 5 drivers are tied at 4 top 10s, Brad Keselowski, Eric Jones, Chase Elliott, Todd Gilliland, and Daniel Suarez. And then a whopping 9 drivers are tied at 3 top 10s, Austin Cindric, Kyle Larson, Denny Hamlin, Austin Dillon, Bubba Wallace, Chase Briscoe, Ryan Blaney, Alex Bowman, and Christopher Bell. A lot of names from a lot of different teams and a lot of different manufacturers, but that's how it goes with these races, especially with the potential for chaos. My favorites to win, this is always super hard for super speedways. My top 10, man, I have 2 drivers that I just left off, and I have a team that I just left off. So let's get into it. Team rankings. Team Penske, my number 1 favorite to win. They always are very good on drafting tracks on super speedways. I expect to see the same this week. Hendrick Motorsports has 2 winners here. They have, and the 2 Hendrick cars that haven't won here, one is top 5 in average finish, and Kyle Larson has a lot of good finishes, just hasn't won here. Alex Bowman has a good average finish here. Hendrick Motorsports has been maybe in some ways underappreciated on the drafting tracks. I'm starting to take notice. I'm going to give them the second best odds. RFK Racing, always good. You know, that Ford program is usually good on super speedways. I expect RFK Racing to have some speed. They've won some next-gen drafting track races. They're always near the front. If you saw in Daytona, the 3 of them got bumper to bumper, and they were able to run the front for a while. I think it's not far-fetched to think something similar could happen. Joe Gibbs Racing, Briscoe, since he's moved there, has always seemed to qualify well. Won this race last year. Denny Hamlin used to be a super speedway force. Hasn't quite figured it out in the next gen. Maybe this week is different. Christopher Bell has a drafting track win, and Ty Gibbs. You know, the Joe Gibbs cars know how to make speed on most tracks, and I think they should be good enough here. And then 23XI, I put Tyler Reddick has a win here. He won Daytona. He's super hot to start this season. He won Atlanta. Bubba Wallace has a win with 23XI before the next gen car at Talladega and is also a good super speedway racer. And Riley Herbst, 23XI, very good super speedway racer. You saw him factor into the finish at the Daytona 500. So 23XI, maybe you don't think of them as good super speedway racers, but they are. Obviously, front row. The last 2 years, especially so far this year, I haven't been sold on front row at super speedways. I wouldn't put it past them to win or be at the front, but I have to go with what I've seen recently. And then Spire Motorsport seems to always have speed. McDowell and Suarez are both good super speedway racers that have won super speedway races, drafting track races in the next gen car. And Carson Hocevar always seems to run up front, and his style of racing seems good here. So I just left Spire Motorsports off. I wanted to put them there, but I thought 23XI was slightly more likely. Individual driver rankings. Ryan Blaney, he's always really good on drafting tracks. He always finds a way to be at the front, and I think this week is no different. Ryan Blaney needs a rebound after last week. Ryan Blaney, my favorite to win. William Byron, I've been talking about how his season hasn't been as good as normal, or as good as he expects. Rough week at Bristol. Okay at Kansas last week. William Byron looking for some momentum. I think they could break out this week and win. Chase Elliott has won this race before. He's always a threat on these type of tracks. He has drafting figured out. Chase Elliott is going to be one of my favorites here. Brad Keselowski has been getting better and better in the next-gen car. He's won at Talladega before. He's almost won in the next-gen car here. Brad Keselowski likes this track. I think Brad Keselowski's got to be one of the favorites. His team's been running up front a lot, and when you run up front a lot, eventually that will turn into a win. Joey Logano has not won at Talladega, but he's probably one of the most, if not the most aggressive super speedway racer. Penske has the best super speedway cars, and Joey Logano is always at the front. Can he avoid getting himself into a wreck is the question. Austin Cindric, one of the best super speedway guys in the entire Cup Series. Very good cars. Austin Cindric last win was here. He's going to be up front looking for some points as he's currently outside the cut line. Denny Hamlin keeps on sliding down my list on super speedways, but I know he has the history. He's been in the picture in multiple super speedway races. Eventually, he's got to get one, and I'm going to keep leaving him on the list. Chase Briscoe used to not be somebody I have on this list, but he has good numbers at Talladega compared to the field. He won the last race here. He's been on the pole for some super speedway races in the 19. He was good at the Daytona 500, was very fast, ran up front for the first stage until he got into a wreck. Chase Briscoe I have at 8. Bubba Wallace, like I said, has won here before. I've talked about it a little bit. He finds a way to run up front a lot in these kind of races. It's only a matter of time before he capitalizes. And this last driver, I keep switching back and forth on who I think it's going to be. Sometimes I want to make it another RFK car because Chris Buescher has won new next-gen super speedway races. Ryan Preece has had some speed with Ford. I was thinking about front row because historically they've been good in the next-gen car, as many Ford teams are. I was even thinking about putting a Spire car here. But I've ended up putting the fun one. Ricky Stenhouse won in 2023 on a super speedway, won in 2024 on a super speedway. 2025 he ran up front but didn't convert. I think Ricky Stenhouse quietly having a good stretch right now, especially for how maybe underprepared isn't the best word, but what they're lacking compared to other teams. And I think maybe he can convert this week. Ricky Stenhouse has always been good on super speedways, and I think he could shock the world this weekend. Let me know in the comments below what team and what driver you think are the favorites to win at Talladega this weekend. Regular season standings, as you can see, Tyler Reddick, 5 of the 9 wins. Chase Elliott is missing his win marker that I have for everybody else, but Chase Elliott is the other race winner because there's only 8 of the 9 winners out there. But Tyler Reddick up to 457 points, and with his win this week, he is now back to having a 100-point lead over the rest of the field, which is just absolutely ridiculous. Denny Hamlin moves into second over Ryan Blaney, and Denny Hamlin is the closest at 105 points back. He has 352 on the season. Ryan Blaney in third, 15 behind Denny Hamlin. Ty Gibbs still hanging on in the top 5, had a solid week at Kansas, continuing his long top 10 streak. Ty Gibbs, 18 points back of Ryan Blaney in third. Kyle Larson moves up to fifth over his teammate, ruining the top 5 being filled with the 5 race winners this season. Kyle Larson just 5 points back at Ty Gibbs after a really good Kansas. I believe he picked up the third most points on the weekend behind Reddick and Hamlin. Chase Elliott falling to number 6 behind his teammate. Had a solid day, but just not quite as good. He is 9 points behind Kyle Larson. He's in 6th. And then the third of the 4 Hendrick cars, William Byron. This is where it drops off. You have Tyler Reddick, and then you have Hamlin and Blaney, and then Gibbs, Larson, and Elliott are kind of in a group. And then it drops off by 30 points. 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Hamlin, Blaney, Gibbs, Larson, and Elliott are all in the 300s. Now William Byron is at 275, 30 points back of Chase Elliott. Tied with Bubba Wallace, who after a couple rough weeks is back to putting together really good finishes after falling from 2nd in points to 8th. Brad Keselowski is behind Bubba Wallace by 11. Christopher Bell could have had a much better day, potentially been above William Byron in 7th, but Christopher Bell instead is settling for 10th in points, 3 points back of Brad Keselowski at 261. That's your top 10. Brad Keselowski's teammate Chris Buescher finally falls out of the top 10, Mr. Consistency, but he's only 2 points back of Bell and 5 points back of Brad. Carson Hocevar continuing his march up the points all the way up to 12th for Spire Motorsports. You don't usually see that this late in the season. Tells you the kind of season Carson Hocevar's having. He is at 237, kind of the next tier down below Chris Buescher in the back end of the top 10. Ryan Preece is behind him in 13th by 2 points. Joey Logano, after an awful race, has dropped a couple spots in the standings to 14th, where he is 10 points behind Ryan Preece. And Chase Briscoe moves into the top 16 in points after his horrific start. He has moved up quite a few positions in just 3 races, where he was outside of the top 30 for a good while this season. He is now into the chase after back-to-back good weeks. He is in 15th, 11 points back of Joey Logano. And then Daniel Suarez is the driver on the cut line right now, 4 points back of Chase Briscoe. Suarez in 16th. Austin Cindric, the first car below 200 points and the first car out of the playoffs. Austin Cindric at 197. Shane Van Gisbergen, I believe this is his first week not occupying a playoff spot. Another rough week at Kansas, and Shane Van Gisbergen is now at 178, which is 19 points behind Austin Cindric. McDowell in 19th in points, 4 points back of Shane Van Gisbergen. And Ross Chastain still in 20th, still struggling to find speed, 10 points back of Michael McDowell. Some big names that you normally see in playoff contention out of playoff contention. Some teams doing well, some teams doing bad. Mostly everybody is roughly in the same spot, but the 2 biggest chargers over the last month, in my mind at least, have been Ty Gibbs going all the way up to 4th, and Chase Briscoe, a pair of JGR teammates, have charged up the stands with a couple of good weeks. But this week in Talladega, anything can happen. I would expect to see some of these close battles really get jumbled up after the chaos at Talladega this weekend. Power rankings. Tyler Reddick, for obvious reasons, is number 1. When you win 5 of the 9 races, you're number 1, and there's a big gap off to the rest. Denny Hamlin, after a great weekend where he arguably should have won, moves into the 2 spot. Kyle Larson, number 3. Hamlin and Larson showed the most speed, I think, consistently all race. Reddick was 3rd, I think, in that department. Those guys had good weeks. They've had a couple good weeks in a row. And all of them have had success at Talladega and super speedways to some extent. I have them 1, 2, and 3. Ty Gibbs continues his top 10 streak after his race win. I did move him down to 4. He didn't quite have the elite speed of the guys in front of him. Blaney, after a really rough week, he's still 3rd in points, and he's still going to a track he likes. But a 24th place finish on speed is not very Ryan Blaney. He's down to 5th in the power rankings. Chase Elliott with just a solid day, solid points day all around. He's been very good at that the last couple seasons. He is sixth in power rankings for me and in the points. Bubba Wallace with a good day, starting to rebound after his rough weeks, starting to get caught back up in points. Bubba Wallace, seventh in the power rankings, in front of the man he's tied with in points, William Byron, who hasn't been bad, especially compared to what most teams would love to have the success he's had. But for William Byron and Hendrick Motorsport standards, I think they would say that they are not having a good season. William Byron in eighth. Brad Keselowski, I have ninth in my power rankings, quietly having a good year, lots of good finishes, lots of points, just finding ways to maximize days, and that has got Brad Keselowski in ninth. Chase Briscoe with a third place finish. Did he deserve it? Probably not. Got stage points in the first stage. But Chase Briscoe, back-to-back top fives, going to a track where he's the most recent winner. Maybe Briscoe is finally, in the 19 team, are finally starting to heat up after a bad start to the season. Christopher Bell could have made an argument for being sixth or seventh on this list had he finished the race where he should have, but that green and white checkered really hurt him, and he lost 15-ish points, I would say, by finishing 20th one lap down because of the contact in overtime. Chris Buescher, a solid day, but not a great day. He has been Mr. Consistency for most of the last 2 or 3 years. Buescher still in the playoffs, back end of like this kind of 8 to 12 range. He's 12th in the power rankings. His teammate Ryan Preece is very similar to him, just not quite as good. I wouldn't be shocked to see Ryan Preece compete for a win at some point this year, get his first Career Cup Series win. Ryan Preece, 13th. Hocevar, with a better pit crew, I think he gets a better finish. Still had a good points day. Carson Hocevar is 12th in points with Spire. Hocevar is having a really good season, should only rise on this list. Let's see if he can carry his momentum through Talladega, where his aggressiveness could be high risk, high reward. Carson Hocevar, 14th. Logano, awful day, just terrible finish on speed again. Logano back in 15th and starting to drop like a rock. He has been very good at Talladega. He needs a rebound there so desperately. Austin Cindric, a solid day, highest finishing Penske car. That doesn't usually happen on mile and a half. Cindric found a way to do it, going to a track he likes. He could be in the playoffs after this week with a good drive, and I think that is not entirely unlikely. Daniel Suarez moving away from Trackhouse, and Spire seems to have more speed. Suarez outperforming all of his old teammates in points and pretty much most statistical categories. He's in the playoffs if they were to start today. Had just an okay day at Kansas, but sometimes that's all you need to do. If you don't have it, minimize damage. Suarez, 17th on my power rankings. Todd Gilliland has been good at Talladega. He's been good at super speedways. Had a great run at Bristol, was able to finish on the lead lap at Kansas, which is not always a given in intermediates for front row. And just kind of having a solid portion. And there's not really at the back end of this top 20, there's been so many guys that have had bad finishes or are bad in points. It's hard to put together the back end of it. But Gilliland, because he's had 2 good weeks back to back and going to a track that he likes, I'm going to put Gilliland 18th. Ross Chastain, he's 20th on points, had a bad week, but still went up. Chastain has just been an awful start to the season for them. Trackhouse seems to just be missing speed. Chastain, 19. Van Gisbergen, another horrible week where they just seem like they don't have speed as a team. I have him 20th. He's in danger of falling off, just like his teammate Ross Chastain. And Trackhouse and their struggles the last month are becoming a big storyline in the NASCAR Cup Series. That's all I have for everybody today. The NFL draft is this weekend. NBA, NHL playoffs are still going, so it should be a fun sports weekend. So find a couch, watch some sports. Please, please, please like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know your thoughts on NASCAR so far this season, what you think is going to happen this week in the comments. Take care of yourself, take care of your families, take care of your friends. It's a crazy world out there. Peace out.